I am mining investor and editor of Resource Stock Digest, Gerardo Del Real, here with my partner, Mr. Nick Hodge, on a Halloween edition of Investing in Bizarro World, which all of you know is our weekly therapy session where we talk about markets, we talk about all the spookiness going on around the election. We are going to go ahead and talk about the overall markets, correlations breaking down. Should you be buying the dip in commodities? A lot to get to. 291st edition of Investing in Bizarro World with Mr. Nick Hodge, who you all know is also an investor and the publisher of Daily Profit Cycle. A lot to get to. Let's get to it. First and foremost, as always, Senor Hodge, how goes you this spooky Halloween Eve?
I go very well. We're going trick-or-treating. It will have passed by the time you see this, but have already done many Halloween activities this week. I chaperoned the third grade class to the nursing home to go trick-or-treating at the retirement community there, and that was fun. And then I had kids activities at the school, so we're already in the thick of it. But tonight will be the true boots on the ground, as it were, out of the neighborhood getting the candy. How about you guys?
Same. Had a great past weekend. Attended a Halloween party. There's a post-birthday party that I'm being thrown by my wife here this coming weekend. So excited for that. Excited
Awesome.
To get the kids. Yeah, thank you. Our kids are older, so it's Halloween nowadays is more for our nieces, and the youngest is 10, so she's not a super kid. But the wives will definitely be out in the cul-de-sac, and I'll likely be having a cold beverage here, holding down the candy fort as it is. And
Hell yeah.
no, excited to be around for another year around the sun, sir. Excited to get to it too. A lot of interesting correlations that had been correlating that didn't correlate today in the market. We're recording this on October 31st, obviously, with it being Halloween. Let's get right into it. The tech sector, right? The big seven, the big six, looks like they're starting to bump into a wall. And I'll tell you the one thing that was a little wonky for me, on a day where the overall market was down, which I understood. I mean, if tech is, missing on certain things, like the overall indices are going to, trickle down. What I didn't understand, and maybe it's just a blip, and we'll talk about how we feel about it, but it was the commodities getting hit the way that they got hit on some of that data, right? It was silver was down over 3% after having a good couple of week run. Gold was down, closer to 2,700 than 2,800. And so I want to start by asking you, is this one of those buy the dip moments in the precious metal space? Because the other thing that was curious to me was it happened on a day where the dollar index broke back below the 104 level. So a lot there. First things first, thoughts on the precious metals dip. Is it a buy the dip type moment?
Absolutely. I've been saying that for a while, and I'll repeat myself just for anyone who hasn't yet heard me say that for a long time it was a buy the dip in the general market environment, and that is now, flipped around where it's time to buy the dips in the gold complex and now even the gold equity complex. Since the last time you and I spoke, gold has hit more record highs, right? It got very close to $2,800 an ounce. That, as you just said, it's pulled back a little bit here. I mean, for a while it was making record highs every single day, and you know what I'm going to say next is that trees don't grow to the sky, and so you have to get pullbacks along the way, and this one was kind of overdue. It's easy to say that once it actually happens, but look,
Sure.
We're just a couple of days away from an election here. By the time the people see this, it'll be the day before the election, and there's been no volatility. We were saying last week everything was awesome. Gold was up. We were talking about PGMs up. S&P was at a record. Meanwhile, it's like the most contested election in recent memory, if not, one of the most contested elections ever in U.S. history. And so I was wondering when sort of the volatility was going to materialize, and here it is. But the back half of that is it's just that. I think it's a blip, right? I mean, it's only been 2 months since we were talking about the unwinding of the Japanese carry trade, and some people were saying that was it, and that was the end, and the crash was here. And I was sort of telling you even in that month, August, that it wasn't, that that GDP still looked okay to me, earnings looked okay to me, and that's what I'm going to say again here. The volatility index spiked to around 23 today. By the end of the day, it had already closed, lower than 23, had turned itself back around.
Yep.
You had you're in the middle of earnings. So you mentioned the AI stocks, the Microsofts, they had earnings. sort of a bit, not all over the place, but not the greatest, not the worst. And so I think just the market took the opportunity to sell down some things. Healthy profit taking is what I would actually call it. And we'll see next week post-election. I would expect some of that stuff to settle back down, and we'll get back to the trends that were already established, which is higher gold and higher gold stocks, which is why it is a buy the dip moment in gold. You mentioned correlations. They've been wonky for a long time. I looked at a 1-month chart today, and still, even with a moderate pullback in the dollar, the DXY, the U.S. 10-year yield, and gold are all up in the past month. And so we would have to talk much more about that, except to say the economy seems pretty healthy, man. Like jobs numbers okay, ADP jobs numbers okay. We'll get non-farm payrolls after we record tomorrow, but economy seems okay. 2.5%, 3% growth, 2.5%, 3% inflation. Jobs numbers okay. I think it's a blip on the radar screen.
Everything is awesome. Everything is good. When everything is awesome and everything is good, I start to worry a little bit, Nick. And usually you're the worrier, and I'm the one that's thinking everything is awesome. I don't know. We didn't get our October surprise, so now I'm looking forward to November, right?
I was wondering about the October surprise too.
Yeah, well, and the day's not over. So let's preface that statement by saying the day isn't over yet. We still have a few hours here before we celebrate a new month. So that is the precious metal space. We will talk precious metal stocks a little bit later on. I'm excited to follow up on a company that we're helping finance that I think we're going to do incredibly well in, but we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. You feel the same way about silver that you feel about gold? Buy the dip across the board?
I think so. Yeah, I do. Yeah,
excellent.
I think so. Yeah. So, you were asking me a couple of weeks ago if, about silver being industrial, silver being precious. I think the switch has sort of flipped a little bit. I think silver is more precious now. It's a bipolar metal, right, Gerardo? So
that's right.
I think it's
bipolar side chick.
I think it's feeling pretty precious right now. You and I talked about silver acquisitions last week.
Yeah.
And the sentiment is there, right? So I know we'll talk about, silver stocks and maybe private placements later, but you and I were participating in a private placement for a company that was well oversubscribed, right? Different than some of the past couple of deals we participated in. So I think the investor appetite is out there for silver as well. So yeah, silver as well.
It's worth noting, folks, that the investor appetite is there on both the institutional and the retail side. If this deal that we're closing here soon that we're both participating in is any indicator, right? I know that there were at least 3 different banks that approached the company saying, well, hey, we'll give you another $1 million, this being $1 million financing, of which we took the bulk of it. And management and insiders, frankly, took the rest, and our subscribers. But there were at least 3 banks that approached the company and said, oh, we'll give you $1 million. You can have $2 million instead. And they were rebuffed. And so now the beauty about structure, and I want to talk about structure a little bit, is they are going to have to come in and buy in the market. And this is a company with a $6 million market cap in a region, in a past producing silver district, where buyouts are happening at the $1 billion level, right? And so it's exciting to me to have a precious metals bull market. It's exciting to me to have a company, and we'll give you the ticker symbol later on, that is a past producing company that's consolidated an entire silver district. It's exciting to me that it's underground. I love that we can see exactly where to drill. I love that we have historic records, and that's one of those companies that can go from 5-6 million to 100 million within months with the right kind of drill results. And so I'm also excited the money's going to be used to drill starting likely January the 1st or January the 2nd. So despite my cautious take and tone on the overall indices, I couldn't be more excited about the commodity space, the resource stocks, and couldn't be more excited to have written a pretty substantial check for this company. Think it's going to do incredibly, incredibly well. Let's move on to the base metals, and then let's move on to energy. When I look at oil, and we talked about this last week, we're going to sound like broken records, but you watch for a reason, our weekly take, so they got to get you the weekly take, right? Oil's trading like there's a global recession imminent, and everything else is trading no, everything is awesome. So any thoughts on the energy space and in the lack of correlation with the base metals, which again, despite a small pullback today, have had a pretty good month?
I'm going to start with copper. I know you asked about energy,
of course.
Copper sort of sideways. And I was saying last week, I lumped copper in with oil. I was saying that they were sensing something in the economy that doesn't necessarily have to be something in the stock market. But those two commodities, copper and oil, were failing to go up, whereas, silver was up, some of the softs were up, coffee, et cetera. And so it was interesting to me, and this is what we said last week, that the oil complex and the copper complex were sort of moving sideways. I still haven't figured it out. I was actually going to spend most of the November issue of Foundational Profits trying to figure it out. It has something to do with OPEC in there, and you got to get a little bit in the weeds because they have their voluntary production cuts that are coming to an end here. I think the end of the year. And there was one country, I think Qatar, had like an allowance, a 300,000 barrel a day allowance, right, that they were allowed to exercise, that they could do. So there's like some geopolitics and some OPEC politics at play because, of course, OPEC could say, well, we're just going to keep the cuts, and that might, send the oil price up a little bit, but then they lose credibility, right, if they don't stick to like what they had put out in the market. So the oil market is a bit wonky. The other thing that I've heard murmurs of out there, and this is actually why you're going to start paying for the podcast, is, Israel responded. They responded to Iran, right?
Responded. It's like if I slap you and then I kill your family, and then you hit me back, and then I hit you back and kill more of your family, and then people say that I responded to your aggression. But that's another conversation.
While it was going on, I was like, wait, is this a war, or are we like sending postcards back and forth? Like they were like, it was like almost like, hello, Iran, we are here to bomb you. Please move out of these neighborhoods. And this is precisely where we were going to hit. Like it was the most, I tweeted, it was the most polite bombing campaign ever, man. Like they didn't take out any critical infrastructure. And so that's why sort of oil was like waiting to go up. And then when the bombs didn't, go to the Strait of Hormuz or take out any of the Iran's production facilities, the oil has sort of broken down. I think it had a 6% down day at one point. But then it started to bounce back up. And then, I don't know why. Let's start there. I don't think anyone truly knows why.
No.
We can speculate, right? One is the reinflation that we've been talking about, the reason that the other commodities are going back up, playing some supportive role in oil prices. The other, and this is the keenest insight that I've come across, is that the quote-unquote the global they, didn't want a huge spike in oil prices before the election, right? Sort of people that are friendly to the U.S. administration, right? The people that are dropping the bombs, right? They could have hit whatever they wanted. And there's nothing to say that on November 6th, they won't hit whatever the fuck they want, right? So
correct.
We'll see. They could bomb oil infrastructure the day after the election, and that remains to be seen. So that's oil. Copper's consolidating. I'm looking at the chart, basically for the past week, it's been stuck like glue to 435. So I think copper's just taking a vacation and says, I'll see you guys the first week of November. Y'all figure some stuff out and we'll get back to it then.
I couldn't agree more. Let's pivot for a second because you mentioned election. And I will say this, I'm going to keep, I'm going to let the election come and go. I will be voting. I won't be, nobody cares anyway, but I will, be discussing who I did or didn't vote for, because either way, I feel a lot like Arnold Schwarzenegger, who had a great tweet this week. You guys should look it up if you haven't yet read it, but he basically said, look, I'm a lifelong Republican. I can't vote for Donald Trump. However you feel, however, understand that Kamala is a horrible fucking candidate, and we are in a horrible fucking place with our political system. And he basically said the whole thing needs to get restructured. He just felt that under a Trump administration, the country would be more divided. We could argue about that till we turn blue. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what I think or even what Arnold thinks. Let's see what the citizenry votes for here coming up on Tuesday. However, the one I am passionate about, and I'll be absolutely very clear, is I am not voting for fucking Ted Cruz. So that one I can tell you, and I can tell you with pride, I have detested and disliked and have had a deep disdain for Ted Cruz since at least 2016. And every year he does more and more to make me like him less and less. So the one person that I won't be voting for is most definitely Ted Cruz. I will be voting against Mr. Cruz. I will be doing that with a smile. And I hope he gets a permanent vacation to Cancun, as he decided to take while, Central Texas was frozen over and people were dying in their fucking houses. Anyhow,
Is his race close? Is his race close or no?
it's very close. It's within the margin of error, with some big names coming out and endorsing Colin Allred, who is the opposition, fifth generation Texan, former NFL player, ex-military. He's got a good track record. At the end of the day, like Rick Rule said on Twitter this week as well, they're all politicians, right? And so by that very nature, like you can kind of assume a certain moral duplicity there on all things. But the guy seems genuine as far as politicians go, and he sure in the heck seems like a much better choice than the guy that leaves Central Texas to freeze and takes a fucking vacation to Cancun instead of
Rick
doing...
Rules. Oh yeah, go ahead.
No. I'll stop my rant because I can keep going.
Instead of doing what his what his oath of office was swearing him to do, for sure. I remember it very well. I was going to say, sorry to cut you off. Rick Rule's been killing it on Twitter. He was asking, he responds to politicians as his style, and he sort of like twists their words back to fit his, worldview or narrative. And I think it was Kamala was tweeting about her support of unions and how Democrats were union supporters. Yep. And you'll recall how on this podcast I called out that when the railroad union went to strike, they immediately told them to get the fuck back to work. But that's another story. Rick Rule said, Madam Harris, do you mind if the taxpayers unionize?
Yep. Oh, he's been great. He's been smoking it. And he also said, look, I'm apathetic at best to candidates on either side of the aisle who don't address the crisis of debt and deficits. And so I will say that, two of the issues I'm most passionate about are immigration and women's reproductive rights and the right to do as they please. I lean more libertarian than anything else on that issue. I am very, very clear that I don't want government telling me as a man or my wife as a woman what she can and can't do with her body, whether or not you agree morally. That's just my take. I respect people that disagree. I respect people that have, their own passionate take on the other side of things. But I absolutely agree with Rick. I mean, I think, outside of the invasion of privacy rights and personal rights from both sides of the aisle, the issue that is consequential to all of us, especially those that aren't asset owners and don't have access to capital, is the debt and the unsustainability of it. I mean, we have a system, folks, where in 10 years, if you're counting on Social Security, it might be a nasty surprise waiting for you in 10 years. This isn't a next generation thing. This is y'all right now. Your healthcare benefits, vote for who you want to vote for. But it's going to look drastically different than it looks now. Military, we tend to pride ourselves on being, and we do. We absolutely have the best military in the world. But at what fiscal cost? And how sustainable is that nowadays when you're paying more in interest on an annual basis than you used to pay for the entire budget, right? And so it's scary times being serious here on the debt levels because there is no mathematical solution out of it. And so what will happen is inflation will ramp up. I won't get on my rant on inflation, but again, the lower income and the middle income people that most need that fixed income, that monthly fixed income, that Social Security check, those health care benefits are the people that are going to be most affected by the unsustainable trajectory that our country's fiscal deficit continues to run. And that is consequential in this generation for this turning. This isn't something that, is only consequential to my kids and their kids. This is consequential to Nick and I, and it's really consequential to folks that haven't, had the good fortune of being able to have, some good years and a track record of being able to take $1 and turn it into 2 or 3. If you're counting on the fixed income, folks, you have to start planning, and you have to start planning for a different future. And by future, I mean very, very soon. So that's my rant on the election. I don't feel like I have a good choice on either side. We'll leave that there where it is.
Hold on. I got stuff. Hold on.
I love it. What do you have, Nick? I love when Nick gets stuff.
Yeah, sorry. I'm going to take my notes so I don't forget things.
Do it.
You're talking about the election, and you're talking about the debt, and how it's obviously affecting a lot of people. A lot of people don't understand how it affects them. A lot of people don't understand how governments over the course of history have inflated away their debts. And I was talking with a group of guys about this at the Halloween party we hosted the other day, just standing around the fire with beers. And, Chris Curl was there actually, because he's here in Spokane, and he was over for the party and started talking about, all this, right? Gold and,
Yep.
and the election and Bitcoin. And I was saying, I don't really worry about my gold investments or my Bitcoin investments. Talked about how I have it down in the safe or whatever. I say, it wasn't that long ago that, gold was $1,500 and Bitcoin was 35,000 or whatever. And literally in the past week, both those things have hit all-time record highs. We haven't mentioned yet in this podcast that Bitcoin hit $73,000 of Bitcoin in the past week. So, I was saying, and Chris was chiming in, and Chris actually did a good job talking about this in his crypto cycle call-in that he had in the past week, is that, some of these people, some politicians are talking about, putting some of the debt or some of the, the reserve currency into Bitcoin and or gold.
Sure.
And it's not unprecedented, right? We've talked about
No.
El Salvador on this podcast. We've talked about Bukele and, what he's done with the El Salvadorian bonds, et cetera. And he's had success. And then you have people here in the U.S. like Judy Shelton who are talking about, some form of gold-backed currency or, monetizing the debt in some way with gold. And then you have, Trump himself talking about in conjunction with RFK Jr., having, Bitcoin somewhere in the mix, right? And,
Yep.
And people have talked about this over the years. Jim Rickards has talked about, how a certain percentage of the global debts go into gold, that, that's his case for $10,000 gold, right? And that's many people's cases for a $500,000 or $1 million Bitcoin, right? Is that some percentage of the world's debts, those record debts that you were just talking about, 35 trillion or whatever it is, gets absorbed or inflated into or otherwise monetized into Bitcoin and or gold. So that's one of the reasons when you scratch your head and say, why are these things going up? It's like, oh, fuck, there's $35 trillion in U.S. debt or whatever. Like, and then you can connect the dots very easily. So and the other thing was, and you can't pay off those debts is the other thing. So
Right.
I forgot to take one note here. I've never considered Social Security as part of my retirement or
Me neither.
long-term, investment plan. Like, I just assume it doesn't exist. I think the numbers say, the government's own numbers, CBO or whatever, Congressional Budget Office, say early 2030s, as you said, in the next decade. It's unless there's some major changes are made, and it's not going to be there. And that was the next thing I was going to say. No one's willing to make the major changes, and that's what the fourth turning is all about, right? Until you're forced to make the major changes. And that's what Rick Rule has been saying, right? Tying it back to politicians and Twitter and debt and deficits and taxes and paying your fair share and billionaires. I've said a lot that I've been told to pay my fair share, and I can't figure out what my fair share is because, one, no one tells me, and two, they couldn't pay off the debt even if they took all my fucking money. And that's what Rick Rule has been saying. Fine, take all the billionaires' money. Take it all. Take it fucking all. Have fun running the government for 2 years before you're out of money again. Like, and then what are you going to do? Like, whose fair share are you going to take then? You have to cut the fucking spending. And that's what we're talking about. The Social Security, the Medicare benefits you were just talking about. Unless someone, some group, some contingent, some majority is willing to step up and do that or is forced to do that, it's not going to happen. And so really, this is what I've and Gerardo spent a lot of time doing and how I've fostered my entire life, because I don't know, and I'm certainly not willing to risk my family's future on, America doing the right thing and saying, oh, we're going to cut spending and everything's going to be hunky-dory. No, I'm going to take it into my own hands. I'm going to make sure we have enough, we're safe enough, etc., by owning those things that I was just talking about that are going up as the government scrambles to figure out how they're going to pay this debt back, which they're not going to be able to do. So anyway, sorry, there was a lot there, but that's sort of why I do what I do. Like it's a foregone conclusion for me. Like some people say it like it's novel, and it's like, yeah, no shit, fucking Social Security is not going to be there in 10 years. So
yeah, this isn't like some tin hat conspiracy theory, people. This is fucking math. Right? Like, we're just communicating math to you. Math is the universal language of truth, right? And so this is just math, folks. This is what's going to happen. They either inflate it away, which means lower income and middle income people in America and around the world get screwed, or they actually take steps to address drastic steps. And those drastic steps, again, are going to affect the people who don't have assets, the people on fixed income, the people counting on Social Security, people counting on Medicare and Medicaid. Those are the people that will most be affected. So either way, what Nick and I are trying to explain to you folks is that you have to have some sort of plan moving forward, because there is no one that's going to come in and start airdropping food for us. And there is no one that's going to come in and just, make sure that you're healthy and make sure that you're okay and make sure that you can afford your rent. It's not going to work out that way. So it's why we're as passionate as we're passionate about what we do. And it's why when I see a metals market or resource market developing, and we saw this, we've seen this for almost a decade now. We've prepared for this for almost a decade now, developing the way it's developing now. We've known the record highs are coming. We're telling you record highs in copper are coming. We're telling you, there's going to be record highs in silver. We've seen the trajectory of this and have been able to profit accordingly along the way by positioning ourselves ahead of time. I had this great conversation with a friend the other day who, he still owns a boatload of Patriot shares, and he's going, man, I used to have $10 and now I have $5. And, I'm obviously just throwing red numbers out, but I go, yeah, but you started out with, 16 cents. And so you now have $5. And by the way, you're positioned with one of the best undeveloped lithium assets in all of North America at a time where we're going through an energy transition. And don't worry, your $5 will be 10 again and will likely be 15 in the next several years. You have to position ahead of the process. And yes, sometimes that means you go from 16 cents to $10 and back down to $5 before you take that jump back up to the $15 level. You have to know what you own. You have to know how you're positioning, and you have to position ahead of time. With that, I think it's the perfect time to talk about the company that we were talking about earlier and to talk about a couple. Yeah. Fire away, Nick. Fire away.
One more thing. I'll make it quick and then you can do it.
No. It doesn't have to be quick.
There's a school of thought that says none of this matters, right? The modern monetary theory, or the people that say mint the coin or you owe the debt to yourself, so you don't have to pay it back. Or the people who think the government can just mail them checks. And to that, I would just say, all of human history matters, and the debts have always mattered. You can't just assume that there's going to be some alchemy or some magic wand. I know that it's September, but there's no spell that can just make the
October.
debt go away. And so, or October, excuse me.
Yeah.
So the last thing I was going to say was about TikTok, right? This is interesting. We've been seeing a lot of these, the advent of TikTok finance and, how to invest. And that was all hunky-dory when the stock market was going straight up and AI was ripping. I haven't seen them as much lately, but I did see one TikTok finance hack. And so I just want to caution you to take this stuff, this social media financial advice with a grain of salt. This is the advice, Gerardo. This really does tie into $35 trillion debts and, the magic of modern monetary theory. So this was the TikTok financial hack. You ready? You write a large check into your bank account. I don't know, make it up, 10 grand. And then you go to the ATM before the check bounces. And you take the money out while it's in the electronic period, before it's settled, while it showed up in the account, but it hasn't actually settled yet. And you take the money out. And this was like a thing on TikTok. This was like a viral trend. It was called the ATM hack. What do you think's happening to the people who did the ATM hack that they learned about on TikTok, Gerardo?
Enlighten me.
They're getting knocks from the ABC agencies at their door.
The alphabet boys and girls. Imagine that, everyone.
Yeah, but so anyway, so the debts are real. There's no easy way out. The TikTok finance is not real. The podcast was titled "Real Deals in a Fake World" a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, you can't ATM hack your way out of this, man.
Nope, not gonna happen. What you can do is position yourself to profit from the irresponsibility of both sides of the aisle for many administrations, again, on both sides, that have decided that we're going to counterfeit print our way into an unsustainable situation until it's no longer an option. And so that means higher prices for all this stuff, unfortunately, folks. That means houses, that means land, that means stocks. There's just more capital chasing a finite number of goods. It's why Bitcoin is at record highs. I'm looking forward, by the way, to having Mr. Chris Curl with me next week to talk about new all-time highs in crypto, which we also positioned you and ourselves by giving Mr. Curl $50,000 and letting him work his magic with it. And that's done extremely well for us. And Nick individually, privately, because he keeps the Bitcoins next to the bullets, as you all know. And you know, Chris has done a wonderful job of walking through his subscribers through the dip and being there to assure them this is a dip. The same way we're telling you the silver and gold price is a temporary dip that shouldn't be bought, that the gold stocks should be bought. Chris has been telling everyone when crypto pulled back to $56,000, $55,000 level, this is a dip. It's going into all-time highs. And if he's half right about where it's headed, you'll want to be at this podcast next week. You'll want to be listening to it, and you should be subscribing to his service, which, again, I think Nick and I have one of the best private placement services across the space. And I think Mr. Curl has one of the best crypto services in the entire space. I say that humbly, not to brag, just because of the work that goes into it and the quality of the results. Point in case, our latest deal that we're financing right now is a company that is called Kingsman Resources. I mentioned it earlier. Past producing silver district, historical data, have most of the records from the 1940s. The entire district has never been consolidated. It's in a region where deals are being had for hundreds of millions and billions of dollars. This has mineralization very similar to that. It's never been drilled at depth. One of the best share structures I've ever seen. 20-something million shares outstanding, no warrants, no options, no debt. So, you know, when the company says, hey, we want to raise some money and we're already shareholders, we want to go drill finally. They've been doing amazing geophysics and geochem work to whittle down the targets to make sure that we hit on those first couple of drill holes, right? And we're confident we're going to hit. So when the CEO comes to us and says, hey, Gerardo, Nick, some of the other people that advise us, right? I want to raise $1 million. And we tell them, well, you don't need the bankers. We can raise you the $1 million. Yeah, between our group and our subscribers. We just would like an allocation so some of our subscribers can get in there and participate. The deal is as good a structured deal as I've seen with as much upside as I've seen in some time. And it's funny because we have a couple of those going on. We financed Hannon a few months ago. The only thing, that we're waiting for with Hannon is, of course, the permits. After that, it's off to the races. You already know the blue sky potential there. I think it's going to be one of the most important copper gold discoveries in recent time. But with Kingsman, the market cap's so tiny, it's $6 million. Discovery of significance while gold is at record prices and silver is headed there. That makes it a $100 million market cap really, really quickly. And it's 20-fold upside as a start excites my capitalist heart. So it also excites my capitalist heart when we're able to get friends, families, and subscribers to come in on a 25-cent deal that has a full warrant for 2 years at 40 cents. Right? A warrant is the right to buy, but not the obligation, the right to buy a share of the company at a fixed price. That fixed price being 40 cents. Well, shit, the stock almost hit 40 cents this week. It hit 39.5 cents before a little bit of a pullback because the bankers were not allowed to come in, because we took the entire deal down, management insiders in our group. There is no room for a bank to establish a position in something that can have 20-fold upside as a start without buying in the market. So it's the reason why the company has been up as much as 70%, and the deal hasn't even closed yet. Luckily, we all have our allocations. We have our paperwork submitted, wires are being sent, all of that. But that's the type of deal flow that Nick and I really pride ourselves on being able to bring to subscribers, to friends, to family, because that doesn't just happen. Stuff like that doesn't just fall in everyone's lap. We work very, very hard to develop the network that allows us that kind of deal flow and that kind of access, right? And we're lucky enough to have advisors, that frankly have opened a lot of doors to us and provide us, access to everything from independent geologist reports to friendly introductions to certain groups. Those things matter. And in these markets, those are the types of opportunities that can be extremely lucrative. To be able to consistently bring those to you, the way we brought you Q2 metals less than 2 months ago, and you're up some 300% on that, and you have a warrant there. I could go on, I could continue, but Excited about Kingsman Resources. For those of you that weren't subscribers and haven't participated, we have other deals that we're vetting that should be announced before the end of the year. I encourage you, if you're an accredited investor, to get in there and sign up for that service. It'll pay for itself. And then that's my rant on our services. I think I think everybody that's serious about crypto or serious about speculating in, and not just the resource space, that's my specialty, but Nick's master of all trades here. He's got biotech stocks, cannabis stocks, crypto stocks, you name it. Nick does it. So a lot of sectors, a lot of options, some great deal flow, and an exciting time that can make you and I and all of us a lot of money. Anything to add to that, Mr. Hodge?
Only that what you just described is called being oversubscribed. So they announced $1 million financing is what you said. That means they're trying to raise $1 million. They're selling 4 million shares at a quarter, right? That's it. There's no more than 4 million shares, right? So when people request, that's what you do when a private placement is announced. You send in your allocation request, your level of interest. When requests come in above that $1 million, what ends up happening is the company says no, and people cut back. So if you asked for, I'm just going to make it up, 200,000 shares, maybe you get 150,000 shares because there's simply not room for everybody in the deal. There's only 4 million shares, right? And $1 million. And if there's more interest than that, then it's like musical chairs, right?
Yep.
Either somebody doesn't get a chair or your ass cheeks on the chair with someone else, right? That's sort of how it goes. And I wanted to say that because we offered it to our subscribers, and I'm not sure if everybody is going to get the allocation they want. And so I wanted to address that on this podcast. We talked about how we're going to start using this podcast as a bridge between our premium services and between issues of our premium services. And I thought this was a good thing just to hone in on, right? And it's one of the reasons why we have subscriber limits on that service, private placement intel, right? Because it's 250 people. Because if you have 1,000 guys and gals that want to write big checks into deals, by the very nature of the size of that list, you then need to find much bigger deals, right? And that's not always feasible when you're talking about small companies. By nature, if it's a small company, it's raising a smaller amount of money, right? And so that's why there's a cap on the number of subscribers that we have in there. And so not much else to say about that. It's just when we say it's only available to 250 people, like we didn't make that shit up. That's why, because there's not enough of some of these deals to go around to get everybody into. And this was case in point or point in case, as you just said, where, some of the people that wanted to participate aren't going to get as much as they wanted. And
sure,
I guess 2 more points on that. One, really nothing we can do about that. It's good that there's that level of interest, but we can't make the company raise more money, right? We can just get the allocation that we're able to get. And 2, it's good for the company because, to connect the dots, you said the stock went to 39.5 cents. Well, what happens if the big smart money can't buy one of those 4 million shares or can't get as much as they want? Well, the only place to buy shares is then to go into the open market where shares are trading.
Yep.
And buy them, which in a tight share structured company, which you just mentioned, 19, 20 million shares out, strong shareholders, large insider holdings, there's not a lot of shares available in the open market. And so when people go in the open market to buy, that's what allows the share price to go up faster, which is ultimately why share structure matters. So hopefully we're teaching some of y'all how to fish out there, and hopefully Kingsman can get the drills going around Christmas, and it can be a wonderful Christmas present.
Well said. Speaking of Christmas presents and speaking of companies we funded and financed in the past, there's one that I think we're up almost some 400% on. Aldebaran Resources is in a full breakout mode, folks. Some of that is the gold price. Some of that maybe the copper price. I suspect there's conversations going on behind the scenes about the imminent resource update that we're expecting. Already a huge copper gold asset in very mining friendly Argentina, but the run it's gone on here the past week, and let me pull up a chart because it's been impressive. The past week it's up 16%. The past month it's up 50%. Past 3 months up 65%, and the past 6 months up nearly 100%. We're up nearly, I want to say it was 400%, Nick, 350%, nearly 400% on that position. And again, when you have companies that have these types of robust resources already in place, simple math, folks, kind of like the deficit. The higher the price goes, the bigger the margins, as long as they can keep costs of production in line, and hopefully, better than that increase in the commodity price. So brighter days ahead. It's still a $270 million company. Last that I checked, 273. Still plenty of room for that to run, but heck of a run for Aldebaran Resources. And a lot to like there. Anything to add there, Mr. Hodge?
Couple of things. One, that's one of the reasons you're going to start paying for this podcast. We called it out specifically in a section of the podcast a few weeks ago where we're going to start calling out these sort of tickers for you. At that time, it would have been around $1.20, and it hit $1.70 today. So worth the price of admission for a free podcast. Our shares that we bought on the private placement are at 30 cents. And they came with a no warrant, which speaks again to share structure. So let me start there. Aldebaran has a very large and strong-handed shareholders. Route 1, Sibanye Stillwater, and South 32 Mining. I forget the percentage that they own, but it's a large percentage of the shares. And so the same thing applies to Aldebaran that I was just saying about Kingsman. Not a lot of shares out there. I don't know who is going to buy them or who could buy them. I'm not sure it's going to be Sibanye. Sibanye might end up, getting diluted out. That's neither here nor there. You mentioned it's not even a 300 million market cap company. I know of companies that are also at the resource stage that have near $1 billion market caps,
Sure.
right? So, and Aldebaran has more ounces, not just of gold, which there's plenty of, but obviously copper and moly and other things as well. So, the resource update is coming out soon, and we'll see how the market takes that. I guess the other thing I would say is that, we just said copper has been sort of sideways. If copper can catch a bid, then I could see Aldebaran at much higher share prices. And so that's about it. It's been a great run. That's a great team. I guess that is the last thing I'll say. They've sold assets before, right? Which is one of the reasons I got involved in 2020 to begin with. And they will likely do it again. And if you look at the sort of the level, and you and I have done this, it's been a year or two, but look at the price that they made that previous acquisition at and apply it to the amount of pounds that they have at Altar, which is the Aldebaran's flagship asset there, then, and the acquisition could be at much higher prices.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Look, we were going to put this part of the podcast behind a paywall very soon. But if you want more free content, go to dailyprofitcycle.com/subscribe. It'll be in your inbox every day. You can get thoughts, rantings, ravings on everything from gold to crypto to tech, to cannabis, you name it. There's likely a piece of content there for you from Mr. Hodge, myself, and our talented group of editors. I want to congratulate the Los Angeles Dodgers and their fans for a World Series championship. It couldn't be more fitting that my first favorite baseball player, which was Fernando Valenzuela, passed away here recently from liver cancer. So for the Dodgers to be able to bring one back to LA the year that Mr. Valenzuela passes away, it's got to be a good feeling for Dodger fans. I have some in my family. I congratulate them. I can't wait for spring training, and hopefully my Cubs make a run at the playoffs, but I know that's several months away. But congrats to the Dodgers. Anything else you want to get off your chest, Mr. Hodge?
No, I enjoyed watching the World Series. I always enjoy watching the Yankees not do too well. So that was eventful, and that sort of puts a bookend on the summer here. That it's officially fall, and we'll see baseball back in the spring.
I hope you all have a phenomenal Halloween. Happy Election Day to those that participate. It would have passed it might not have passed by the time you get this. But either way, be safe out there, folks. Be kind with each other, regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum. I am Gerardo Del Real, along with Mr. Nick Hodge. This was the 291st episode of our weekly therapy session that we call Investing in Bizarro World. Have a great one out there, everybody. Send us away, Nick.
See you guys. Have a good November.
Hey there, you independent-minded investor. If you like this video, make sure to tell us so by clicking the like button below. Subscribe to our channel so you never miss another one. And share it with everyone you know on social media. You can also click the link in the description below to check out more information-packed videos just like this one. Thanks for watching.